It's Jason with Sweaty Heroes and Comic Bargains, and these Comic Bargains are paper heroes in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. Awesome Comics Handbook is Alan Moore's ideas for the young blood and Rob Liefeld characters in the 90s. You can see that Alex Ross did some of the sketch drawings for Supreme, so making their version of Supreme really into like a combination of the Silver Age Supreme and like a 90s superhero by making him an older hero as well. And then you have like the sketch for the dog is cool. And then he talks a lot about, Alan Moore talks a lot about Glory, which was a character Rob Liefeld created, which was like a lot like Wonder Woman, and how he would make changes to that character and add a lot of different mythology to the character, and talks about the mythology, how he wants to play with mythology within the Extreme universe. And it would be similar to DC Comics, and in ways would be different to DC Comics. And then for his version of Young Blood, he condenses the characters to 6 different characters, so he can just sort of focus on those 6 characters and how he wants to have them relate and connect with the others in the Extreme Universe. Really interesting read. He has some ideas that I don't agree with that are wild. I'll just say that because for the sake of the content of the video. This is more mature readers, I'll say. How about that? Then we have Amazing Spider-Man Annual, which is cool because I'm going to put this in my collection. It was $1, but the condition is pretty much still like enough that I'm going to put it in my in my collection in terms of me being a completist for all the Amazing Spider-Man stuff. Introduced Annex, so that's kind of was an obscure new character that they had here. But I love the annuals when they had backup features with different supporting characters from Spider-Man's past, not just Spider-Verse characters, but like different characters like Black Cat and in this case Solo. Here we have an example of Marvel Tales where I would say, how do you collect Marvel Tales in the Spider-Man? So for those who are just reading comics, you can have Marvel Tales fill in the blanks of some of those Spider-Man issues. So this one reprints Amazing Spider-Man 254, which is around the Alien Costume Saga. So if you can't afford the original stories of the Alien Costume Saga, and you don't necessarily want to get a trade, you can get some of these single issues. This is a really cool one. Tom DeFalco and Rick Leonardi drew this issue. Then we have an issue of Amazing Spider-Man, which I found, which was the first appearance of Puma, which is really cool. And I have this issue in a better condition, so I don't need it. And I have the facsimile as well. So this will go in the dollar bin at Vintage and Vinyl Amherstburg, which sells comics for $1, as of 2025 anyways. And but like I said, if you wanted to, you could like say, well, I can't afford this one in mint condition, so I'll take this rough copy one, or I'll take a Marvel Tales. And then again, we have another example of Marvel Tales. We have one of my favorite issues, Amazing Spider-Man 259 is reprinted here, which is the origin of Mary Jane Watson, and really gives her a lot of depth to the character that she previously didn't have, although it was alluded to before, of course. But giving her a background of her family, and really begins to get really deeper connection in the 80s for Peter and Spider-Man, so they eventually will get married. Cool. Very cool. I like this issue, but I have the original 250. I have a facsimile of 259, I believe. I think I have it. And then we have Amazing Spider-Man 341. Again, the condition of this issue for $1, even though it was in the dollar bin, I think it's really good. It just happened to be in the dollar bin, probably was overstock. So I am going to keep that as part of my Amazing Spider-Man run. This condition is not really that perfect. You can see there's like a crease here, maybe. Well, you can't see maybe, but you can feel it. I can feel it. But I would probably put this in my completest collection of Amazing Spider-Man until I can get a better copy. But otherwise, this is the Spider Slayer storyline, and this is really cool because Mark Bagley drew it as well. Oh, and this one, I should note that it's the red and black costume, and this cover is homage to the Spider-Man where he got the superpower, the cosmic powers from Captain Universe. But this one, he is powerless, and so he's fighting Tarantula without any superpowers, which is fun. Then, us Canadians know about Amazing Spider-Man the Canadian issues, which I think it's funny that they actually had an issue up to issue 4. They didn't bother like each issue being a new number 1, but these were released by the police, basically. I'm not kidding, the Canadian police. And so each issue was kind of like, the first 2 issues were about drugs, and then this issue is about turbines, I guess. No, it's more celebrating bike riding, safe bike riding, but these are a lot of fun. The first issue we had a cover by Todd McFarlane, but there was 5 of them that were released over a couple of years' time. And Spider-Man has his adventures in Canada, which is really cool. Ironically, doesn't interact with Alpha Flight much, but there's a lot of like Canadian references. It's a lot of fun. This is Scott Lobdell doing the story, Jim Craig doing the art. I highly recommend, if you're Canadian, to buy these. But if you're anyone who loves Spider-Man stories, these are classic. Here's a cool thing: Daredevil issue. Nice little. One of the rare pinup covers that I think is awesome. But Mike Zeck looks like they did that. But that's an awesome pinup cover. But when I looked inside, Todd McFarlane art, like doing a Daredevil issue before Amazing Spider-Man. That's really kind of cool. And it's a Christmas issue too. So just a simple single issue of Daredevil fighting a villain called the Trickster, not to be confused with the Flash villain. This one is more like into doing stunts, like kind of like takes the name Daredevil where it would apply to stunts, right? And but it's cool to see Todd McFarlane drawing Daredevil. And personally, I think that as much as I love his Spider-Man, obviously his work on Spawn shows that he would have been good on a title like Ghost Rider or Wolverine. Would have been better suited to his taste in terms of a writer when he later becomes a writer. Then we have Lady Rawhide, which is a spin-off of Zorro, and she basically is a female type Zorro character, Spanish character, but a lot of fun. She's a cowgirl type character. It's still Western, but it is a lot of fun. The art's really cool, and Don McGregor, Mike Mayhew is the creative team. A lot of fun. The Topps Comics, Zorro Comics. Crisis on Infinity Earths. This was Legend of the DC Universe was kind of like Legends of the Dark Knight, but instead it was any characters instead of just Batman. And this issue focuses on Crisis on Infinity Earths, which this is 1999 when it was written, so Crisis has been around for about 13 years. Kind of cool. Then we have an issue of we have the first issue of Moon Knight, but because of condition, dollar band. That's cool, and it has a classic cover. And Bill, I can't pronounce his name, Sienkiewicz, laugh at me later, and Doug Moench do the art, or writing him, sorry. And this looks like it's gonna be a fun issue. Moon Knight is a cool character I've always wanted. I always thought he's more closer to the Paul Piero the Shadow than he is to Batman, actually, with his mysticism and stuff. Robocop #1. This is cool because when I was a kid, I had Robocop issue #2. And back in when this came out, and way back in 1990. So since it took me 35 years to find issue #1. No, I never looked for it. But I'm really looking forward to reading that. And then we have Solar Man the Atom, which I really like. Solar. I think Christopher Nolan would do a great Solar story. Solar being kind of a scientist who has a nuclear experiment, but like the art here is has Barry Windsor Smith in it. There is a central panel of the explosion that created Solar that was supposed to be designed like a giant panel that all connects together. Kind of cool. I recommend reading Solar. A lot of these are found in dollar bins or even sometimes in quarter bins, actually, the Valiant Comics, because there's so many. Solo Avengers with Hawkeye and Mockingbird. This is in such beautiful condition, and it was Hawkeye, and it had kind of like a spotlight on these characters that I had to get this, and it was a lot of fun. I read it already. Again, an old issue of Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, that's over 40 years old, that is in rough condition, therefore it's $1, but I've never read this issue before, and older Spider-Man are hard to find in cheap prices at like $1, so great to find. Another Spectacular Spider-Man from the 90s, this one by J.M. DeMatteis and Mike Deodato, so this is fun. All the J.M. DeMatteis Spectacular Spider-Man are great reads. And then issue number 2 is Spider-Man 2099, which is the third appearance of Spider-Man 2099, I believe, his first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man 365, and then his solo title began with Spider-Man 2099. So the third appearance, but it was $1 because of the condition. Fun read, though. Very much like Blade Runner meets Spider-Man meets The Fly. The Fly being the classic sci-fi film from the 50s and then the 80s. Really fun. Look at this! Superman Adventures trade. And this is a Superman Adventures trade. And it's based on the 90s cartoon. And that's the Supergirl costume that was designed for the cartoon. And this was $4 at Dollarama. If you got a Dollarama, but it was $1 in the comic bin because of that. Because, someone get it. This Venom issue is a reprint of Venom number 6, Lethal Protector, where Venom became a superhero. But it's drawn by Ron Lim. But you can see that it's a reprint because there's no thing over, and it would have been included with an action figure. And then finally, we have an issue of Web of Spider-Man, which I remember having this issue in the 90s as well. So it would be really fun. Now, it's in rough shape, so I probably won't keep this copy. But introduced, I really liked Howard Mackey, right? Alex Saviak doing art. It was always a big fun reading. I love all Spider-Man. Web Spider-Man, spectacular, amazing. Take care, and that's for it for now. Thank you. Bye.